Welcome to Diversitas, audience. Diversitas, as you know, is a podcast at the crossroads of diversity, business, and culture. Today, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Greg DeShields, Executive Director of Tourism Diversity Matters. Tourism Diversity Matters is an organization devoted to addressing DEI initiatives and issues within the tourism industry. Mr. DeShields is a longtime tourism and hospitality executive, not to put too much emphasis on long time, but he has been in this game for a while. And he's worked in such organizations as the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, where I met him, as well as Temple University's Fox School of Business and School of Tourism and Hospitality Management. Mr. DeShields, across the length and depth and breadth of his career, has been a fierce advocate for DEI issues, even before it was kind of in vogue to be so, particularly in the hospitality industry, but also beyond that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. He continues to make his mark in creating opportunities for people of diverse backgrounds. And so we are very, very pleased and honored to have Greg DeShields. Greg, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's my pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's just jump into it. You are the Executive Director of Tourism Diversity Matters. What is that?
So we like to call it TDM. The organization was born out of the murder of George Floyd. Our president and CEO, Mike Gamble, who leads an organization called Searchwide Global, it's a national executive search firm for the tourism industry, is headquartered in Minneapolis, and he had firsthand point of view of what was happening in our country during the summer of 2020. And although we wanted to change the world, clearly Mike had a vision to impact the hospitality industry. He's a person who spent a lot of time selling Philadelphia and knew a lot of the work that we had done in Philadelphia around multiculturalism in the late 90s, early 2000s. But he felt that this was a great opportunity for the industry to create its own organization that would focus on DEI 365 days a year. So we have a lot of organizations in our industry that have DEI initiatives and committees and departments. But to have an organization that would focus on DEI 365 days a year was something that our industry needed across all different sectors. And that's how we came into existence. So there were three partners who came together to develop the seed money to create TDM. Our parent company, Searchwide Global, an organization called Conference Direct, and our very own Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. They came together in order to provide some of the seed money to start the process. And then board leadership was, without any doubt, a big priority. So Elliot Ferguson, who at the time was chair of US Travel, but also president of Destination DC, came on board and was real clear that if we were going to do this, we had to have an executive director and not operate with a working board, so to speak. So I joined the team as a consultant through the collaboration with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And we built the organization to serve as a collective impact model way of approaching DEI, meaning we know there's a lot of great things that people are doing, but how can we collaborate with them while also serving as that resource to help various sectors of our industry realize where their blind spots are around issues of access, opportunity, ethnic disparity that has been prevalent in our industry for years. Through that, we also felt that it was important that we could provide guidance, direction to leaders who have strategy around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but are not necessarily moving it forward, especially from a sustainable perspective. And then, of course, we felt that we needed to create work that we would continuously focus on. So we have four pillars of activity. One is around talent pipeline. So we have a well-established apprentice program that is really meant to respond to that question when people say, I know there's diverse talent, I just don't know where to find it. So we want to be able to give them an answer to say our apprentice program, as there are many other great apprentice programs across the country, but ours specifically is focused around that next generation of diverse leaders in our industry. Workforce for our industry continues to be a dilemma as we are recovering from the pandemic. We were fortunate to partner with US Travel as their DEI collaborator in November of last year. And there is a coalition of leaders which we participate who are looking at those issues around workforce. At the end of the day, we as an industry have to reposition ourselves, present another compelling reason for people to aspire to invest their career in our industry. And to that degree, our efforts are centered upon not just sharing insights about our industry, but plugging into the community. So looking at high schools, colleges, community programs that are in the area of workforce development to help them have a better understanding of why this industry is such a relevant one, but especially from the perspective to ensure that there's greater diversity, not just at the base of the triangle for our industry, but the senior
Mm.
diversity as we move to leader.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because and I'm glad you raised that, this concept of a triangle, because when I think about, so as you know, I had a kind of a peripheral relationship with kind of hospitality, in particular with my relationship with the with the Pennsylvania Convention Center
Mhm.
Authority. And in my experience there, I did see um, more people of color than I saw kind of in other industries. Um, was that, was that because I was in Philadelphia? Is that more of the norm? Tell me about the representation of diverse peoples within this industry.
So listen, we're a service industry, and it is for the most part, as you look at it, what really supports us is those support service people who do the day-to-day work to move our organizations forward. And because for a number of individuals, it's a great way to come in and kind of learn skills and capabilities. You can start at a level that really supports the business. The issue is, how do you aspire and move up?
Mhm.
Part of it may be for some that they're fine in the service roles that they play. Maybe someone who serves in banquets at the convention center loves it because, quite honestly, they can make a great living, as does a bellman who probably would do nothing more than carry bags and collect gratuities throughout the day. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that
Right, right,
because, it pays taxes, it puts college through kids, and,
right.
for the most part, it makes our industry work. But there has been difficulty in our industry to continue to elevate people, because in that pool, there are certainly some people who could move from being a housekeeper to work in accounts payable or accounts receivable.
Mhm,
Or that particular person could work on audits or other, financial related roles in the organization.
mhm.
But organization has to have the intentional focus to see that that base of diverse talent can aspire and move up in their organizations. And once we start to see that growth, it gets thinner and thinner as you move into like managers, VPs, and such. And that has just been a systemic problem in our industry. And with the turnabout of our industry, we have this opportunity to look back at our industry and say, whoa, maybe there's some areas that we really missed the mark. And organizations have really begun to focus on not just the fact that we are hiring diverse talent, but how are we elevating diverse talent
Right.
into these different roles. Apprentice programs are great. Management training programs are great. Organizations like TDM and many other in our industry who are raising the industry's awareness of the Panhellenic Council or the Divine Nine or the Black MBAs or Hispanic MBAs, organizations that may have been on the fringe in terms of where people would have looked for diverse talent are now being put front and center to say, you have to fish where the fish are. And if you really want diverse talent, you can't tell me that the Black accountants don't have, incredible people who could step
Right,
in your CFO.
right.
So to that degree, the industry has to become, and I believe is doing everything it can to be more intentional about moving it up through leadership roles. But that has been an ongoing challenge in our industry and is one that has had a great deal of focus as a top priority.
When you think of when we talk about tourism and hospitality management as an industry, where are the majority of jobs and opportunities in that industry? Are they in hotels, hotel chains? Are there other areas where there are a significant amount of job opportunities? Talk about that for a moment.
Well, I mean, when you look at our industry, there's airline, there's cruise ships,
Right,
there's
right,
meetings,
right,
events.
right.
I mean, there's so many different sectors of the industry that it's kind of hard. I mean, but listen, if we just look at the convention space, if you look at 1 million square feet, 1.5 million square feet, there are a lot of service people that have to make that happen, from housekeeping to servers to administrative security. So I would say across all channels of our industry, there's a lot of opportunity. I think the individual maybe has to decide which sector of the industry is most attractive to them. When
Hmm.
I got in the industry, food and beverage was where I thought I wanted to be, and restaurants and any food and beverage catering related space was something that was attractive. But later I had a mentor who kind of introduced me to hotels and the concept of hotels, and the growth path for you in hotels were one which I felt gave me clarity of how I could evolve, meaning
Mm.
I could work in rooms, whether it was in housekeeping, ideally, where I would learn the skill of managing people, and
Hmm.
evolve from that to front office, where I had more of a business sense of the type of business growth that we have through selling hotel rooms, and then moving through rooms division of managing the overall space of the building, engaging in sales and marketing. So those are roles that will take you through different avenues, if that's the avenue that fits for you. But
Right.
there's some who love working on the event side. They love the idea of doing small little business meetings to weddings to large conventions. So I would say that there are a plethora of jobs all across the industry. It's tying into a sector of the industry that excites you, but then looking for what are the paths of elevation and growth, and really being committed to move in that direction.
I mean, when I think of hospitality, I think of first and foremost, I guess I think of hotels. Um, yeah, I mean, if I had like 8 lives, right, one of them would be, I think, in the hotel business. I just think it's, I don't know, something glamorous about the hotel business, and I know of friends of mine who have gotten into that business and basically get to go and live in these different parts of the world, kind of running properties.
Mhm.
People, but to your point, I don't know whether we really, and by we I mean people from diverse backgrounds, um, really understand the number and the different kinds of opportunities that present themselves in this industry. How do you get the word out to those folks?
And that's amongst the things. And listen, I'm still very active in a variety of academic institutions, from community college and their hospitality program, Cheney University and their hospitality program, of course, Temple and their hospitality program, the high school academies programs, and the whole HBCU hospitality programs. I think it's important. Listen, I went to Johnson and Wales, and it was definitely about, what do you want to do? I want to be a GM. Like, that was the response, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, because it can be glamorous, and certainly you can have a huge impact in terms of your career in the business
Right.
community. But there are other aspects, and fortunately, having the opportunity to work at a convention and visitors bureau, you learn about destination management, and you learn about marketing a destination, and the integration that you have with economic development of a destination, and working with political leaders, and coming together around how you create jobs for those workers and bring economic value to the community. So now it's not just checking people in, it's looking at the entire system of a destination, and how, as an organization, you can help to create an interpretation of that destination, attract customers, engage the community to kind of show the best that it has. And that's an aspect of the industry that most don't get introduced to. And I think certainly as people of color, we should get more and more exposed to that, and see
Hmm.
our growth and our success in looking at how we market destinations, and how we sell destinations, and how we bring economic value, and working with political leaders. Like, that is where I think the industry starts to get really, really exciting. And
Hmm.
that, I think, is amongst the things that should be discussed as you talk to young people who are aspiring their career. Yeah, spend like 10 years in hotels, and then get out of a hotel and work for a small DMO, or work at a convention center, and then build your full level of expertise and knowledge in the tourism industry, as opposed to just the hospitality or hotel sector, to achieve either success or just a greater knowledge of it. But exposing people to a variety of other paths in other sectors, I think it's key.
So, a lot of what I deal with on a day-to-day basis really is on the equity part of DEI, right? So how do we create more opportunity, particularly for businesses of color, to be able to enter into an environment and be able to create opportunities in terms of employment opportunities for people who work with them? So how do they grow their businesses within particular industries? Are there opportunities for diverse entrepreneurs in this in kind of the broad category of tourism and hospitality management? And if so, what kind of opportunities are there?
So there's two things I would say. I had the opportunity to collaborate on a program with the National Association of Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers, representatives from the National Black Chamber of Commerce and the Minority Business Development Agency about, opportunities for diverse Black businesses in this industry, entrepreneurs. So part of it is, it's a two-part. The one is that those businesses learn about this industry, because if I'm looking at my business mix and I add hospitality to it or tourism to it, the reality of it is it's not going to be like this consistent stream of people. It's not like, oh, I'm opening my door and every day I'm going to have customers come in from conventions. There are periods of time where we're going to have citywides, and maybe it's not a convention season. So maybe now I have to reposition my business to be more attractive to leisure travelers. So part of it is, as diverse businesses, is that we really understand the business flow. And that can be market by market. I could be in Chicago, it could be different, especially if I'm near McCormick Place. It could be different if I'm located near Disney, outside of, Kissimmee in Florida. So part of it is just realizing, like, how do I need to educate myself about this business and how can I become integrated in this business? Part of it is diverse businesses, minority businesses should become members of either the Hotel Association, the Restaurant Association. They should be a member of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, because those organizations will help provide you a lot of insight of the business growth, the business opportunity. But I think on our industry side, we have to continue to hold ourselves accountable in terms of our participation rates and move them beyond the 10 to 15% and strive for like 27, 28%, that we are looking at how we issue RFPs to ensure that we are distributing to those people who may not be on the list, meaning, okay, so maybe I'm not a member of the African American Chamber just because my budget model doesn't allow for me to be a member of it.
Right.
I've got a great business and people know that I've got a great business. So we as businesses have to kind of stretch ourselves in the hospitality space to find those people, because if I'm not a member of the African or Hispanic Chamber, doesn't mean that I'm not a good business. It's just maybe I'm not a member this year. Maybe I've been for years, but I'm having a rough year. So how do I find those people? So maybe working with the Office of Economic Opportunity, which should be able to do it, or many of them may have been certified through the Small Business Development Agency, or working with the Small Business Development Agency. I mean, there's a few different configurations of how you could get access. So I think it's making sure that as the hospitality industry wants to aspire to have more diversity of minority businesses, is to target greater sources to get information to them about opportunity. But I think minority businesses or diverse businesses have to educate themselves about the industry so they know how to plug in when the opportunities are made available.
How, speaking of opportunities, I mean, one of the things I've been keeping, I guess, an eye on, like everybody, is, how has our economy as a whole recovered from this epidemic? I know that tourism and hospitality was hit particularly hard through the epidemic. How are things now for the industry?
So the statement would be that we have an uneven recovery, and there are a number of factors. So if you look at our industry, we have some particular segments that really focus how our business flows. So leisure always leads. That's you and me deciding, I've been home long enough, I've saved enough money. I'm going to Florida. I'm going to California or whatever.
Right.
And those were people who were traveling last summer, and certainly people who are going to travel this summer. That doesn't necessarily carry the weight of our industry because not every destination is leisure. I mean, they may have a piece of leisure, but some places really cater to the leisure segment. So
Right.
leisure leads and leisure has done well, but once again, that doesn't relate to all sectors or all cities across the country. So the next sector that we focus on is meetings and conventions. And quite honestly, as a result of a lot of the reduction of the precautionary measures, we're beginning to see more confidence impact meeting planners and their attendees. But most meetings have moved their cycle. So in some, it's a 3-year cycle. It's an alternating year, could be a
Oh,
7-year
okay.
cycle. So maybe I was bringing, 30,000 people to Philly in July of 2021, but Omicron or Delta made it very uncomfortable. So we postponed that meeting for 5 years,
Right.
not to hit Philly, or maybe 2 years. So that window of opportunity for local businesses and employment has been delayed. And to that degree, we see that's where the uneven aspect is taking place, because there's been a rhythm of north, west, central, south that has been somewhat disruptive because meetings have had to be postponed or rescheduled. Some may be smaller. So this is where that uneven factor comes into play. And then the business sector. So those are, and that's the lucrative section. That's those people from major corporations who are comfortable to send their sales, their leadership teams across the country to conduct business. But there are some considerations. Why do I need to send a team to LA when I can put them on Zoom?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, we know that in-person meetings is without any doubt how business gets done, and that
Right.
will change. But those decisions were made on business years. So some organizations may not be revisiting beefing up their business travel until perhaps next business cycle or budget cycle. But I think the one that we all have to be mindful of is that we here in Philadelphia, many destinations have put a significant amount of effort and dollars around the international market. And the international market, especially the Asian market, has still been dramatically impacted by COVID. Listen, I just traveled to Canada, and I got to tell you, it's not like you can just say, hey, I'm going to go. You got to do pre-testing,
Right.
and you got to have vaccination. And I mean, you've got to think this through. So the reality of it is that international travel is certainly not at the levels that it was. And you need all four of those: the leisure, the convention, the business, as well as the international, to kind of get us all back. So some have said it could be 5 years before we see our industry do
That was
even.
my next question. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it sounds like it is going to take a while, and there's so much uncertainty because I don't think that anyone, is confident that this will go away and not come back. Like this, I think this is a new way of life for us. And the question is, how does that industry kind of adapt to that new way of life? Or does it just shrink?
Well,
And that's that.
I think our industry has certainly been well educated. And I think moving forward, our industry, whether it's airline, whether it's restaurants, whether it's hotels, whether it's attractions, we've certainly learned how to conduct business in spite of a pandemic.
Mm.
So we put in incredible safety precautions that can be implemented through operational strategies. You've stayed at hotels, and there's alternating days of when you can have someone come in and service your room. We've certainly invested a lot in terms of technology so that there's less touch that takes place. There's more integration of healthcare professionals kind of guiding us in terms of appropriate measures. So those were things that we had to do a quick study on that as an industry, but we've learned and we've really adapted. So I think even if we were hit with another pandemic, we've learned a lot in terms of how the industry can successfully function, build consumer confidence that I can travel to a city, stay in a hotel, minimize my degree of exposure, and conduct a business, or at least enjoy myself from a vacation perspective like I would like. So that's, I think, the big learning curve we had as an
Right.
industry. Clearly, it would be put to the test if we had some major outbreak, but I think we've learned a lot
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree. I mean, obviously, we definitely have learned a lot now. Whether or not we apply it in the way that makes sense for us to
Mm,
continue to thrive economically, that's an open question.
mhm,
Speaking of economically, it's funny. I used to go to these board meetings at the convention center, and the Philadelphia Visitors and Convention
mhm,
Center Bureau and folks from the convention center would make these reports to the board, and they'd always talk about economic impact, economic
mhm,
impact. Oh, this convention had a gazillion dollars of economic impact,
mhm,
right? What does that mean? Like, can you give the audience kind
mhm,
of an indication of what economic impact means and how
mhm,
tourism and hospitality really have a
mhm.
net positive effect on cities like Philadelphia in
Sure.
terms of economic impact?
So economic impact is money that's not here. So let's start there. So for
Okay.
example, if we say, oh, I want to go to the auto show, and don't get me wrong, the auto show is amazing, but I'm in Cherry Hill and I'm coming over the bridge to Philly. Well, that money flows back and forth between those two cities often.
Right.
The real win is when someone from California says, I'm coming to Philly and I'm going to drop $5,000 while I'm in Philly. That's economic impact. It's California money coming to Philly. And if I'm an attendee at a conference, my economic impact is from the minute that well, let's just say for simplicity's sake, when I get off of the airplane. So when I go to Tony Luke's and I get a sandwich, or when I hop in a local Uber or a taxi cab or I take SEPTA, that's all economic impact. That's from another market that came here. And then, of course, now I'm staying in your hotel and I register and I'm paying that hotel occupancy tax. And then when I leave from my hotel room and I go over to Reading Terminal, all of this is economic money that I'm bringing from California. Every time they swipe my credit card or I give you cash, all of that's money that's flowing from California to Philly. Or when I go to the gallery or any of the shops along any of our Walnut Street. So as I'm spending money, that's what it is. So multiply that over 25,000 people who are
Okay.
coming into the city. That's
Okay.
all new money. It's not as though they said, oh, I could have gone to a movie. No, I'm bringing all of that money here. And that's when we are able to begin to extrapolate what that economic impact is. We know how much they're paying for hotel rooms because we know what the rate is. We know how much that they're probably going to spend at the convention center because they got exhibit booths and things like that. But there are these other ancillary figures that we are able to determine through working with different associations and organizations, whether it be from some of the retail outlets that say business was great, all the convention ears came in with their lanyards and spent a bunch of money. Sometimes we incentivize it by offering these discounts that show that we brought that money in, and by discounting it, had it have a direct impact on a certain business. So it's that external money from other markets that come in that really help to identify the economic impact.
Love it. That is a great explanation. So basically, any money that is from outside of our market that comes into our market
Mhm.
is making an economic impact on our market because it's money that we wouldn't have otherwise seen or received,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
I love that.
But
So
remember,
let's
there's some other internal money that is created as well,
okay,
because not only did Mary go to the food truck to buy a hamburger, and that's fine. So that's economic impact. But now the person at the food truck who is local is also creating impact because they have to go and buy from their local distributor to make sure they have enough hamburger in order to support the request by Mary, who's a conventionaire, to buy a hamburger.
right.
So it's money that comes in that also creates that other form of economic impact of B2B, where we're buying products and services to make sure we have it available. So that's how it lifts all boats.
So I know you. I know. I mean, obviously, you're with TDM now, and you don't have responsibility for what happens here in Philadelphia. But do you have a sense of how the industries are doing here in Philadelphia post pandemic?
Well, so Philadelphia is a convention town. We've got over 1 million square feet of convention space, and
Yes.
we've had some phenomenal return returns of meetings and conventions. Next year, well, I'm sorry, 2022 still has many successful conventions that are scheduled, and 2023 looks extremely promising. So that's, optimism that we can have about the market. And remember, you move and meetings shift based upon customer sentiment based on the pandemic. So we're still having a little bit of that, but more importantly now, we're at that point of people who had moved where their meetings are taking place, and that confidence just builds. The other is we are a city that had a great deal of focus around international markets. So we've continued to stay present in international markets. So as the precautions are released, that we'll begin to see more travel, but clearly, whether it's Mexico or Canada, we are able to conduct that level of international business, but that's one of the sectors. Business travel, we're a big
Right.
business travel city. So those are sectors which are part of what they've described as the uneven. We do have leisure, and obviously 4th of July, they just announced the Welcome America celebration will be huge for Philadelphia. But, in January, well, the amount of leisure may not be as much in
Right.
demand, but we do
Right.
have cyclical. But international convention business are big for us in Philadelphia, and leisure, without any doubt, is a strong base for us. But there are certain times of the year that maybe it's greater than others. So we'll definitely do our rebound as other comparable cities will. But that's different than, for example, if you're in Fort Lauderdale, where, everyone has already made the decision, I'm going there for sun. So.
Well, I will tell you, I'm trying to be in Arizona between January and April, and I may extend it to May because this weather has just been crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm just, I'm at the point in my life where I just don't want to be. I hate winter. Like
Yeah.
I just hate winter.
Well, remember, if you're in California, you just a short ride over to Hawaii. So either way.
Yes, that is very true. That is very true. And I've never been to Hawaii. I would love to go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you for a minute. How did you what prompted this journey for you? This DEI journey for you within tourism and hospitality? Like, how did that start for you?
Well, I mean, you mentioned in the beginning before DEI, and yes, I got into space long before then. As a Black person in this industry, that's always, the music that's playing in the background about, where do we go? How do we find our opportunities? And it's certainly evolved over the years. When I got into the industry, I was part of a management training program that coincidentally had a focus on developing, talent. And back then, it was really centered upon how companies would get tax credits because they were incentivizing more people of color to be in their management training programs. And I was with Hyatt Hotels. But for me, I worked in the industry, fortunately had the opportunity to get out, went to work for the Philadelphia OIC running their hospitality program. And that really began to raise my level of awareness around issues of ethnic disparity or some of the systemic racism that really affects how we get into this business. When I was worked in the hotel industry, I think the pivotal moment was I was working at a hotel. I heard about this organization called the Multicultural Affairs Congress, led by Ramona Risco and other icons like Amina Young and all of these people, Dwight Evans. And I was like, who are these people? And they're all Black, right? So I wanted to go to this meeting. So I told my boss I wanted to go to this meeting over at the convention center. And she said, I don't know why you want to go to that meeting. It's just a bunch of Black people talking about this business. And I was like, oh,
okay.
So I was working in a hotel. Anybody who works in a hotel knows if you were there from 7 to 3 and your management, it's really 7 to 5. I had to get everything I could get done so I could leave. And by the time I got over to the convention center, it was maybe about 5:45. And Ramona Risco was speaking. All I said was like, I got to be a part of this. I don't care. I mean, I just had to, it's just like so many incredible icons of leaders who were Black, who were talking about, working in this industry. Bruce Crawley. I mean, it's like all these people who were talking about how we were going to ensure that Black people had access to all of these meetings and conventions. So that was really the impetus that got me involved with the Multicultural Affairs Congress, working at OIC under a legacy of Reverend Leon Sullivan, and working for people like Bob Nelson and Phyllis Lawrence. I mean, just all of these people who are like advocates about pushing the envelope forward. And at OIC, it was really about ensuring that Black people had access to careers in this. And that was something that was not part of this industry. And then after working with OIC for 7 years, and then later being exposed to Temple and working for Jeff Montag and Betsy Barber, who were advocates about, intellectually being able to engage in this industry, building not just great entry level, but management level individuals. So through the work that I did at SCHM, further support by Jeff and Betsy to become involved with the Bureau, working with Tanya Hall, who became leader, who got me involved in committees that exposed me to just about everybody, that were, movers and shakers. One of the committees I took over was Audrey Thornton, who was over at the Women's Heritage Center in Fairmount Park, who said, listen, you're a Black man and you have to make sure that you create opportunity for young Black people. And I just remember when she told me that in her stylish format, and Cecilia Yap, who was in Chinatown. So those are kind of the people who were, part of the birth to me in this and gave me that level of responsibility. So for years, I wanted to lead the Multicultural Affairs Congress. And Tanya Hall, who I do a shout out, was, my sister from another mother, was like, look, Greg, if I ever step down, you're it. You're that heir apparent. And fortunately, Bill Wilson and John Kroll, who were chairing it at the time, asked me to join the Bureau. Jack Ferguson was president. I'd worked with Tom Muldoon.
Oh, these names, these are blasts from the past.
Yeah,
man,
and I can remember them all too, right?
Man.
But when I took over leading the Multicultural Affairs Congress, my first task was to rebrand it, to now call it PHL Diversity. And, the idea was that we had such an incredible model of how you can create an opportunity for everyone to have a seat at the table. And we did that so well from a cultural perspective, a multicultural perspective. But Philly was evolving. So the idea of now, bringing women to the table and LGBT to the table was something that we hadn't done. But listen, we wanted to create economic impact. And at that point in time, Julie Coker had moved into leadership, and it was about how do we position Philadelphia to get every bit of that tourism dollar that it can. And that's what led me down that road. And as multiculturalism evolved to DEI, kind of gaining the expertise in that was a top priority for me, instead of pontificating about it, like to actually know stuff about it.
Right.
And then that's what led to the TDM role.
Yeah, man, you just took me back. I gotta do a shout out to Amina Young. She was a big mentor for me.
Yeah.
She was a giant in this community, particularly as a Black woman in that industry. Trying to being the head of the convention center, as is no small feat. And so, Amina certainly blazed the trail. Julie has blazed the trail that she continues to blaze. And you have blazed the trail, right? Because, I know you are not only a Black man, but you're a Black gay man. And so you have others that you care about, who you want to succeed. Your community, you want them to have what they should have in terms of opportunity as well. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
So it is, I do want to talk about that, but there's one shout out I have to say. So my guiding North Star in this industry has always been Valerie Ferguson.
Okay.
Valerie was here in Philly for some time, opening the Lowe's. But I met Valerie when I was a management trainee. And one of the things that Valerie told me in Atlanta was always be the best at what you can do. She just emphasized always be the best. And she said, and always look good while you do it. So, she came to Philly and was here for a period of time. And for me, it was like, I don't know, it was like, just like the biggest and the most important person in this industry. I mean, she was the first woman to lead the American Hotel Lodging
Yeah.
Association as chair. But to speak more specifically to the LGBT community, and I get asked that question about being Black and being gay. And at the end of the day, I think I'm always going to have to deal with the fact first that I'm Black
Right.
when I walk into a room.
Right.
And putting it together about being gay, somewhere back in the 1980s, I realized that if I was going to be in this industry, that I was going to be a Black gay man. I wasn't going to be a Black guy that people
Right.
later found out he was gay. And
Right.
then, my husband and I, we've been married now for almost 30 years next year.
Wow. God
So,
bless you. Wow.
but for me, it's always, my husband, and he is like completely on this journey with me. Actually, when I took the role at the Bureau, he said, look, I'm going to go wherever you want me to go for a year. And then after that, I'm only going to go to the things I like. But I think it's important that however you approach this work, you have to be good at this work. I don't expect anyone to make any sort of concessions for me because I'm Black, because I'm gay. If I walk in and I'm going to talk to you about economic impact, or I'm going to talk to you about occupancies, or I'm going to talk about DEI strategies, I'm just going to talk to you about that. And it's great that you're hearing it from a Black guy. Maybe that gives you a center. But then in addition, I should be able to be whole as to who I am. So if as I'm having a conversation and it strikes me that my husband talked to me about that, and I can add another layer of insight around it, or I happen to have a wedding ring on, that there's a connection that obviously he's married, so, and I'm not going to split pronouns, I'll say when I talked to Tom last night or him, that's just me being 100%. But that's that whole idea of people have to be their whole self.
Well, they have to be authentic, right? And
Exactly.
that's part of the problem in any
Right.
industry that we
Right.
find ourselves. Can we be authentic in the industry?
Right. But that's driving you to be good at the work that you do.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's about the work, and I would emphasize to anyone, whether they be Black, gay, Asian, whatever, just be awesome. We know that we have to pay the Black tax, so I'm fine with that in order to be able to deliver 110, 120. I mean, we're always going to strive for that. But I would be much more inclined to always recognize that I'm going to deliver Black excellence any way I possibly can. I'm going to always provide exactly what is expected and go beyond wherever I can in the work that I do. And as it relates to, who I choose to love and who I'm with, that's all just part of the package. But at the end of the day, the work is the work. And I would certainly encourage anyone that that's where your focus should be.
Awesome. I love that. So what is next for you in TDM? Like where do you see TDM going? What are you trying to accomplish?
So TDM, we celebrate our first year anniversary in February. So,
Wow.
we're on this journey. Soon will be a year and a half. As an organization, we certainly need to evolve. I've kind of looked at how organizations go through this startup. And I think through our initial launch of the organization, we've certainly helped to stay focused around strategy, delivering results, gaining support and confidence of a board, ensuring that our industry has greater awareness. Like those are the stages that we've gone through, and then proof of concept that we've continued to take what we've done and show that it's been able to work, and now move into a point of where we're able to show impact. But as it relates to any organization, you have to evolve. Eventually, we'll see more support. We do have a bench of consultants that we work with who help to kind of expand the work that we have. But for us, it is about continued focus of providing resources and support to our industry, building stronger affiliations and collaborations, and just serving out measurable results. We put out our end of the year report for 2021. Can't wait to see what 2022's look like. Because listen, it's all about what have you done for most to kind of measure your success.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions that really are for you.
Right? Okay, great.
What book is on your book stand currently?
I always like when people ask me that book, and it's probably going to be real corny, but I'm going to tell everyone. So it's the book Hotel. So it's a novel that was written by Arthur Haley, and it's all about, the day in the life of the St. Gregory Hotel in New Orleans. And it's, pre-1964. So this was when Black people couldn't even stay at a hotel like that. But the story is based on it being an independent hotel that was owned by this bigoted guy. And essentially, there was a big brand that wanted to buy it and no longer leave it as an independent. But there are all these little stories, which is like what it's like working in a hotel, that are what's most intriguing. So Cornell University had it as a required reading for all of their hospitality students for years. When I've taught adjunct, I've always had it as a required reading. But my retirement plan is to write the Black version of this book. And I've always said that I would feature Valerie Ferguson as the general manager of the hotel. And then I was trying to think, who would Valerie want to play her in the movie? And I was like, Angela Bassett, of course.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. Wasn't Hotel a TV series?
It was. It evolved to a TV series. So it was a book, it was a movie, it was a TV series. But my plan is to hopefully have a
James
conversation
Brolin
with
was
Oprah.
the lead character.
Absolutely. But I would love to evolve it to get Oprah Winfrey or whoever to get supported behind this book. My plan is to travel around the country and interview Black dishwashers and bellmen.
Oh, I love that.
Front desk people.
I love that.
All of their stories. And
I love that. I love that. Favorite type of music?
Oh, it's all house music.
Oh, for real?
Totally.
Okay.
And
All
Spotify
right.
has become my big friend. I don't know the name of anything, but I know the genre of house music.
I will tell you, Pandora is my big friend, right? And
Right.
so, trying to get myself into shape. So every morning I'm listening to house music while I'm on my Versa climber,
Right.
and that keeps me sane.
Right.
So I love house music. So
Well,
that's
here's the thing: if
hilarious.
you do Spotify, it has the overlay, so the music never stops. So that's the big upside of it. Because Pandora doesn't do it. One song then goes to the other, but there's the overlay. Like
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. See, I've never tried Spotify, although, audience, we are on Spotify. Just so
it gets you hooked on it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you describe as your biggest success?
There's so many things that I've had the fortunate experience that it was a success. The thing that kind of comes to mind to me is my mother passed away in 2017. And, when she passed away, she had somewhat of an estate. And the question was, what do you do with that? And the idea was, I'm sorry, I said 2017, 2007. So the question was, what do you do? Like this icon in your life is no longer there. So fortunately, working at Temple University, they explained to me about what it means to do an endowed scholarship. So my brother and I endowed a scholarship.
Wow.
And so it's an interpreted for how we distribute them. We've, I don't know, distributed maybe 30 different scholarships. But the idea that you have created something that will be a lasting memory of who she is throughout, eternity. But what's really exciting is my niece has two small boys, and her youngest was a baby at that first distribution of scholarship. And he's now looking at colleges. So he's looking at Temple because that's where we endowed the scholarship. So, the idea is to get him to go to the school where his grandmother's endowed scholarship exists.
I love that.
Like, that to me is the biggest accomplishment in life.
Greg DeShields, thank you so much for being on Diversitas today. We really appreciate it. There's always a, great expectation for any guest, but you have, true to form, exceeded all expectations, and we appreciate your time, really do.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
And thank you, audience, for paying attention today, for being a part of our show. We look forward to continuing the discussion and keeping it going. Take care.